Hey, I'm on top, really I'm on top. Yeah, whole crew on top, really we on top. Wake up every morning with drive. Been on the grind, know I had to survive. We had to win. Started from the dirt and the rubble. I had to be the needle that was popping your bubble, letting the air out. Walking with a clear route. How we gon' rise today? I'm making mine today. Go make yours. Double back and flip the proceeds. Last year on the corner sipping OE. Had to get off the block. Best friend smoking rock. Best man called the cops. Rose from the city that never sleeps. It's the melting pot. I came through with purpose. I never question if it's worth it. Homie, I'm on top. Really, we on top.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 1 of Pure. This is the series where we talk about the best golf swings in the world that have been or will have been or are coming through the ranks today and are winning tournaments. If you're enjoying this series, make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any future videos, and like this video and comment your thoughts down below. I'll be replying to all your comments, so if you have a particular swing you want to see featured, just pop it down below. If you have any thoughts, let me know. So today we are talking about Jack Nicklaus. Certainly if you think about the first ever kind of athletic golf swings, you're probably talking Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, and probably Ben Hogan as well. So let's dive in and get started. So looking at front on, there's some pretty noticeable things he did. Even at the setup position, his right shoulder is pretty slanted. I mean, the right shoulder should always be below the left shoulder, but his is even more exaggerated, I would say, than the normal. Obviously, in the takeaway, looking front on at his swing, we have this huge wind up, and obviously one of the things he was most noticeable for is that left heel coming up off the floor with that left knee moving in. Now, a few things to mention. This enabled him to get a huge amount of power, to get a huge amount of hip turn in the backswing and rotation, which he probably wouldn't have been able to do if he had kept that left heel planted on the floor. His mobility would have been slightly more restricted. However, it is worth mentioning that if you do keep that left heel on the floor and the lower body more stable, that it is more likely you will be a bit more consistent with kind of less moving parts. Obviously, you do want to use your lower body well, you do want to get that rotation, you do want to use the ground effectively to generate that power. But if your legs are moving around too much, I see it a lot with kind of golfers just at my home golf club, particularly the ones that aren't very good, I would say, especially the ones that don't play very often. They get a lot of lower body movement, a lot of kind of sway of the hips. But it's good to mention that Jack Nicklaus isn't swaying. His hips are actually staying very central. He's just turning and lifting that left heel. It is also important to note that from a front-on view, as he gets to the top of the backswing, his head and spine is still in the same angle it was at address. So he's not swaying, he's not changing his spine position, that's very much staying the same. The hips are kind of rotating around one axis, the shoulders are rotating around another axis, and the head is kind of staying behind the ball. It is actually quite amazing that he had so many moving parts to his golf swing, but if you actually watch his head position throughout the golf swing, it really doesn't move very much. There's no great up and down, there's no great side to side movement. It's pretty stable, which is kind of surprising how much his kind of upper and lower bodies are really moving at a really fast speed. So as he starts the downswing, he really goes hard at the ball. He really clears that left hip out the way and moves his left hip laterally, getting his weight more onto his left side. His head stays pretty much in the same position. He definitely initiates his downswing with that kind of left knee. Obviously, he's got that moved inwards. He's got that left heel in the air. He really stamps that down, clears that left knee and that left hip, and really rotates hard. And you can see as he swings through the ball, he almost swings himself off of his feet. All his kind of weight is really on the outside of his left foot, and the inside of his left foot is really coming up. He did swing very, very hard at the ball. He was a very long hitter even in those days, and he had a very athletic motion. But there are a few things that I probably wouldn't recommend you guys trying from his golf swing. Since retiring, he has had hip surgery and back surgery, and you can very much see why from how hard he went at the golf ball and the positions he got himself into through impact. Remember that golf is a repetitive sport. Any bad movements or any stress you're putting on particular parts of your body are going to be so exaggerated because you're repeating that same movement over and over and over again, and eventually something's got to give. So if we have a look at Jack Nicklaus' swing from down the line, there's a few things to know. At address, he is quite rounded, I would say. His shoulders are kind of quite rounded. You can see there's a lot of arch, especially in his upper back. Again, not something I would typically recommend. That's going to put a lot of strain through your back, your shoulders, and your neck and everything as well. So I definitely wouldn't recommend that. You want to create better posture, have those shoulders back. So as Jack takes the club back, if you notice his right arm and his right elbow is going to stay on top. Now this keeps the club more in front of him. It also keeps the club on a more vertical plane in the backswing, which is definitely something that is good. You want to be a little bit careful the right elbow doesn't come too far away from your body. This can lead to it getting trapped behind you and getting the club too far across the line at the top of the swing. But Jack definitely was a player that got that right elbow very high and his hands very high at the top of the backswing. And this is something that he actually talked about through his later days of the career, that he actually tried to get his hands a little bit lower, more rotational, instead of getting his hands and arms so high up. So that might be something to note for yourself if you get your hands and arms very high above your shoulder plane. If we draw a line through his shoulders, you notice the hands are above that line, and if you look at his right elbow is quite far away from his body. Two things that I typically wouldn't recommend. They're not going to lead to consistency. They can lead to creating quite a lot of power, and they're something that a lot of amateurs do to generate power. If you think about a baseball swing, you would naturally want to get that right elbow high and then to generate power with that kind of motion. So as he gets to the top of the swing, he actually starts to stamp that left heel down and really initiate the swing with that lower body. It's important to note that he does get the club back out in front of him at this point. The club starts to shallow out quite a bit, and he gets that right elbow back in front of him. So the right elbow is not hanging behind him as he starts the swing. It's actually moving back in front of him, and that's how he's able to deliver and release the club as his body rotates out the way, which generates a huge amount of power because it's almost like a whip. That body's moving and turning, and then the club's being delivered, creating a lot of speed down at the ball. But if we notice as he comes into impact, he is quite cramped for room. He has early extended a little bit. His spine angle isn't quite the same as it was at the address position. This is because of how hard he's rotated that lower body. He just isn't able to have, it would take a huge amount of flexibility to really keep that body in that position, and if he did, he would probably get the club trapped behind him. So he is early extending a little bit as he swings down and moving those hips into the ball. But he does use his extension to his advantage to hit up on the ball and to get a huge amount of height. He was known as quite a high ball hitter. One thing you'll notice is at impact he gets that right elbow very tucked into his side. This is something a lot of the best players in the world do. Even now on the PGA Tour, it's very athletic motion, using those levers to release down into the ball after the body has cleared away. Now you'll notice as I'm going through this golf swing that I'm not talking very much about the golf club itself, because the club is a representation of what the body is doing. The body moves the club. A lot of people get this wrong, especially when they try and work on their golf swings. They focus on where the club is in their swing, but they're not thinking about how it's getting there. They're not thinking about the body moving, the pivot, the rotation, the release, and everything like that, the arm structure. These are the things that get the club into the position we want it to be in. There's something really important to understand when you're working on your golf swing. So if we look at Jack Nicklaus with a short iron now, he definitely had a very upright swing plane. Nowadays, you notice swing planes are a lot flatter, a lot more rotational. There's less kind of release and use of the hands through impact. Jack tended to shallow out the club by dropping the hands, and then he had this big sort of release through the ball. You'll notice that Jack had a huge amount of extension in his golf swing. This did start a little bit early sometimes, especially more with the longer clubs, I would say. But this extension allowed him to launch the ball very, very high. However, if we have a look at his swing after impact in the finish position, which he had this kind of lovely, lazy, iconic finish, you'll notice that all his weight is on his left foot, but his actual spine and upper body is tilted quite far back. Now, this probably is something that kind of led to his back injury, in addition with kind of how hard he went at the ball and the kind of cramped position and his poor posture through impact. So again, it's not something I would highly recommend. Definitely have a look, and you definitely want to have extension in your golf swing. But if you have too much of it, you can create a lot of problems for yourself. And if you don't have any of it, you can again create problems for yourself. So there's important to have a balance there. Nowadays, everyone talks about shallowing the club, how important it is to shallow the club, which I don't think something which was too talked about previously in kind of the Jack Nicklaus era. It was certainly mentioned a few times, in particular by players like Ben Hogan and those sorts of guys. Now, one really important thing to mention is the higher the hands get at the top of the backswing, the more they have to drop in order to come down and hit the ball without getting steep or coming over the top. So Jack did this by dropping the hands really nicely, getting the club back inside, and then had this huge release of the hands and arms through impact. Now, this is a really iconic, beautiful old golf swing, but it's again not something I would highly recommend. It would be better to have those hands and arms a little bit lower, and then you're just taking away a moving part essentially from your golf swing. The higher the hands go, the more they have to drop, but if the hands don't go as high, if they stay more in line with your shoulder plane, like a lot of pros do now, then you can pretty much just drop them a little bit, turn and rotate onto the golf ball, leading to a huge amount of power and consistency. So I think Jack Nicklaus is a pretty perfect place to start in this new series of pure golf swings we're going to talk about. There's going to be much more to come, so stay tuned. We're going to go through all the greats and all the modern players as well. So make sure you hit that subscribe, like this video, comment your thoughts down below. Let me know who you want to see in future videos, and I'll see you guys soon. Remember, in golf and in life, grip it and rip it, guys. See you soon.
Hey, I'm on top, really I'm on top. Yeah, whole crew on top, really we on.